So without a doubt, the most famous and the most recognizable release by the designer brand Abercrombie & Fitch is Fierce. Came out many years ago, composed by Christophe Laudermiel, an amazing perfumer. Here we have a release that actually came out last year. This is the men's version. It's called Away. It is a pineapple, violet, geranium, pepper, ginger, sandalwood kind of a fragrance. In any case, I'm excited to give you my thoughts on the smell, so make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin today's review and I tell you about this fragrance by Abercrombie & Fitch, Away, it's a very bright, fresh, refreshing, slightly fruity, slightly oceanic and spicy fragrance. I do want to start things off by mentioning that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content, please do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to it. Make sure to hit that bell icon so you can be notified whenever I do upload future videos to the channel. And of course, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it or if you took something of value from today's episode. Now, I do have a few fragrances by Abercrombie & Fitch. I've also done a video on First Instinct, and of course, Fierce is a classic. I own that one as well. Such an iconic mall scent, if you want to put it like that, because that's kind of what it is in literal terms. It's a lavender fragrance that inspired a number of other fragrances, some niche fragrances as well. Well, here we have one that's been compared to a few other designers, and I think some of the comparisons are warranted, some of them are not, but it definitely possesses its own unique personality, of course, with the vetiver and the ginger and the pepper and the pineapple. It has a lot of unique ingredients in here, so I'm excited to give you my more in-depth thoughts on the smell. Let's start things off with the presentation. Now, in the opening, this fragrance is really fresh, really inviting, a nice burst of citrus in here. And you know what? I love grapefruit. I've come to realize that I really love grapefruit. You know, I've been wearing a lot of Bulgari Tiger lately, and I think that that's kind of like made me realize that grapefruit is one of my favorite citrus ingredients. And you know, I always loved wearing leatherwear for men by Coach, and that was a grapefruit bomb, one of the best. So this has a nice bit of grapefruit in here, but there's a spicy component to it as well. And I think it's that grapefruit ginger combination that kind of does remind me of Tiger in a way. But you know, it's funny, when I looked online, people are comparing it to Y by Yves Saint Laurent. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. And then I did a side-by-side and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I can kind of see that. Y, I think, kind of takes things in a more of a blue direction. And I know blue is, there's a little bit of synesthesia to an earth there, but it does kind of have a bit of an oceanic vibe to it. And I think the geranium has a lot to do with it. I think the violet has a lot to do with it. And I'm sure there's some, you know, oceanic and aquatic ingredients in here. I don't know if there's Kalone. I don't know if there's, I really don't know. There's a lot more than meets the eye when it comes to the note breakdown and it having full transparency. But you know, it's funny, in the opening, it kind of reminded me of a mix between YSL's Y and Millesime Imperial by Creed, where it kind of had like this salty, fruity, fresh, tart introduction, and I was like, whoa, this is gonna be a love for me. And what I found was that that enticing opening, that bright, full, flavorful, citrusy, slightly fruity opening is kind of short-lived. After you give this fragrance about 20 minutes to dry down on your skin, it falls kind of flat. And I hate to say that. It is still appealing in the dry down, and I think there are still some fresh and clean and redeeming factors in the dry down, but unfortunately it's not as bright and as lively and as animated as it was in the opening. And if only that accord would sustain itself a little bit longer, I think we'd have a real hit here. But it does open up very nicely, and the geranium is supposed to give this fragrance a bit of a minty, rosy touch. And minty perhaps, yes, rosy not so much, which might be a good thing if you're looking for a fresh, sort of aquatic type fragrance. You don't want it to smell like rose. And then in the dry down, there's sandalwood, there's vetiver. Whatever vetiver is in here is certainly of the cleaner variety because there's no rough edges here, right? It's a very inoffensive, mass appealing, commercial smelling fragrance. and it's a great smelling fragrance. I think if you are a fan of fragrances like Nautica Voyage, Y by Yves Saint Laurent, Millesime Imperial by Creed, Invictus Aqua by Paco Rabanne, this is the type of fragrance that is going to appeal to you. Now, I paid full retail for this. I probably could have found it discounted because it did come out last year, but it was kind of an impulsive buy, and I smelled it and I really liked it. And I think they might have been running a promotion on it at the time. So I said, why not just add it to the cart? But I am satisfied with the way that it smells. I just wish that that opening lasted a little bit longer. And to couple that with the fact that this isn't necessarily the longest lasting fragrance in my collection, that's a double bummer. But aside from that, it does smell really good. And if you're looking for something, you're on a budget and you want something that smells good, something that isn't tonka bean heavy like a lot of the other designer fragrances on the market nowadays, you're looking for something that has kind of a combination of some really good smelling fragrances on the market. I know I compared it to Bulgari Tiger, not as much as Millesime Imperial and even YSL's Y. This one is actually a pretty decent offering. It's just that the evolution of the scent, I don't think works in its favor. And also it's not the greatest in the longevity department. So I sprayed this one about 15 minutes ago and I'm still enjoying that fresh introduction. And you know, my wife loves this one. So, you know, as soon as I purchased it, I walked through the door and she goes, another one, and she smelled it and she goes, oh wow, this one actually smells good. And she actually loves, I think, the women's version of it. I ended up purchasing for her the women's version of it as well. Leave a comment down below if you want me to review that one. And that one kind of reminded me of I Love New York for Mothers by Bond No. 9, which is in a pink bottle. And my wife used to wear that one all the time, so she kind of really enjoys the women's version of Away, if such a thing exists. I think, no, it's not Away, it's called Authentic. I'm actually looking at it on the bookshelf there. I have shelves on both sides of me. In any case, it's a great fragrance in the opening, maybe falls a little flat. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. Now, first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, it's kind of a hybrid of some other mass appealing blue and aquatic types of fragrances, but that mass appealing smell is very short-lived. It does dry down to something that smells very fresh and mass appealing as well, but I feel like that alluring introduction that makes you feel like, oh wow, what is this? It's so good. It's something you could really sink your teeth into. It is kind of short-lived, and once those ingredients die out, like the ginger and the pineapple and the pepper, it kind of acquires a new personality that is not as animated. In terms of the longevity, you can expect about 5 hours on your skin. Projection on this one was great for the first half hour to 45 minutes. Right around hour 3, it became an elbow's length scent, and right around hour 5 or 6, totally disappeared. In terms of the versatility, great for the hotter weather. It is masculine leaning. I think this will appeal to somebody who's a little bit younger, and I do think it leans casual as well, as opposed to formal. In terms of the presentation, I actually like the presentation. I think, you know, the blue color conveys the fact that this is going to be a lighter, fresher fragrance, and I like that there's this stopper here to prevent it from, you know, spraying if you're traveling with it or something like that. Built-in atomizer. My final verdict on this fragrance is if you're looking for a bright, tart, juicy, citrus, slightly spicy fragrance that doesn't have the greatest longevity, but you're on a budget, or maybe you're just looking for a nice fragrance to give as a gift to someone, you're not looking to break the bank, I think Away by Abercrombie Fitch is a good fragrance. Maybe not a great fragrance, but I think it's a good fragrance, and I think it's great for somebody who is getting into fragrances, especially if they don't want to smell like everyone else, because I would imagine that there aren't too many people who own this fragrance or wear this fragrance, certainly not as many as, you know, Invictus Aqua or Yves Saint Laurent's Y. I would reckon that those fragrances are a bit more popular than this one. But in any case, that was my review of Away by Abercrombie Fitch. I hope you enjoyed the review. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this review, please let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below. Always love to hear from you. Please don't forget to support the channel by subscribing to it. Hit that bell icon so you could be notified whenever I do upload future videos to the channel. And of course, give this video a thumbs up if you take something of value from today's episode. Thanks again for watching. Love you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.